Deserved or not, livestock often get a bad rap when it comes to the environment. Sometimes, though, the right system in the right area, and if it's managed properly, it can actually bring profound ecological benefit. I came across such an example in Ireland's famous Burren region in West County Clare. Cattle farmers there use a practice called winterage, or Burren Winterage, where, somewhat counterintuitively to the more globally common practice of using lowland pastures in wintertime, they actually raise their cattle on the mountainside. Rather bare-looking mountainsides at that. It's a very interesting system. It's actually thousands of years old, and it's also critical to the biodiversity of the region. It's also a system which almost went away due to a combination of economic and environmental pressures, policy pressures, and all those other fun things that the ag sector globally experienced throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Winterage has come back in a big way, though, thanks to some pretty dedicated farmers and researchers and other members of the community. In March 2023, I visited one of those farmers, Aoife Forde, and together with a friend of mine, who's conservationist, Brandon Good, we discussed the ins and outs of the system, the challenges, the ecological value, and frankly some of the continued, interesting pressures that are being applied at the policy level to a system and to a program that up until now has actually been quite successful in reestablishing something that's very culturally significant to the region and to the biodiversity of the region as well. I apologize for the audio quality in this. It's still a bit of an amateur operation here, and it was recorded while we were having a cup of tea in Aoife's family kitchen. She was kind enough to devote some time to two curious Canucks, and we really appreciated that, and we really thought the conversation was interesting. Hope you do too. There's certainly a lot of information on like this system, right? But like if you're, maybe we can just start with like the elevator pitch of what it is, in your own words, and then maybe we can dive into, because it went away for a while, right? Let's maybe start, just give a little bit of history of like, where it came from, why it went away, and how we. What I want to get at is like how you actually managed to bring it back, because it's one of these success stories that. The theme for this entire project is basically like, both of us very firmly believe that we have some problems that we could maybe benefit from by looking at programs such as this in Ontario particularly. Cool. But that's kind of the overarching concept. So
I suppose to elevator pitch is very much, it's a very unique landscape here and what you're looking at. I suppose the landscape that you see has been formed over thousands of years. Like we'll say, originally the burn was a hazel woodland, and then farmers came into the burn and they cut away the hazel, and they then revealed, I suppose, the burn that we see today, like the amount of rock that you do see. And I suppose livestock, and particularly cattle, have always been a very prominent feature in that landscape. And I suppose without the cattle, particularly the landscape literally just reverts back to what it was, the hazel woodland. So I suppose it's a very changing landscape constantly, so I suppose it's about managing that, and I suppose that's where cattle come into it. So it's unique as in the summertime our cattle graze the green fields like all the rest of the cattle do in the country, but instead of going into, I suppose, a shed in the wintertime, they go up onto the hills instead, and that's where they stay for the winter months. And I suppose there is the reason originally that winterages were used in the wintertime is because the summertime there wouldn't be an abundance of water up there, because a lot of the water supply is springs. So originally the farmers going back to thousands of generations would have put cattle up there in the winter because there was abundance of water, and that was the reasoning behind it, and then that's what stuck, and then that's the process that we got to. And then I suppose, so the role the cows play is, our cattle play is, I suppose, they graze that grass off in the wintertime, and then they come out of it then, and then they allow the burn to bloom in May and June, and all the flowers and flora come up, and it's magnificent when it's in full bloom. I suppose that's
we were saying that driving around. I mean, we come this time of year, because it's a little cheaper.
Yeah.
And there's less people. But you drive around and we've never been here in high summer or anything, so we're looking at all this and be like, that would, I mean, it's gorgeous now.
You're going, yeah. We're like, where do you think the plants are going to grow here? But it's actually amazing, But basically, so the hazel woodlands are fantastic. They are habitats in themselves. But anywhere those dense hazel grows, you won't see any flowers. The flowers, because they physically don't have the light.
Yeah.
So we could say, okay, no, we're going to take all animals off this landscape here now, and we're going to let it revert back, and that would be fine. You'd lose all the rock because it would disappear under the hazel, and you would lose all the flora. And I suppose the Burren is very unique because you get the Arctic flora and the Mediterranean flora growing side by side beside each other. And it's just
it's
bonkers, really.
Wild. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So is it what biome is it ecologically? It's not tundra. Is it just part of?
I think it's just whatever came in. I think it's from what I know, it's just whatever came in the ice age and however the Burren was formed, and obviously the seeds were deposited so you have the spring gentian, which is the most famous flower of the Burren. So that grows in the Alps as far as I know, and then you have the early purple orchids that will grow in the in the much milder climates and things like that. I'm not completely savvy on the flowers,
tempered by the sea.
Yeah. There's stuff that literally in other parts of Europe and the world they grow in completely separate climates, but in the Burren they grow as one. Yeah, so it's kind of unusual in that sense.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're protecting the ecological diversity of the landscape.
Yeah.
Through their farming practices.
Exactly.
Which is a phenomenal.
Exactly.
It's such a natural way to effectively do that and control.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if it all goes to hazel, it's no different than we have an invasive species in Ontario called European Phragmites, and it comes into our wetlands and our marshes, and it's prolific, and it gets nothing just vast sections of marsh
real
are
bad.
Just this, and it cuts out everything else
and kills everything else. Yeah,
and even the animals get stuck in it and it gets really hot, so it's really quite detrimental.
Okay,
so it's almost the same kind of parallel.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
We haven't figured out how to graze cattle on it
yet. Yeah. No, hopefully, because this when you see invasive species starting to come in and take over, it's not great. Really isn't.
Yeah, we have a lot of invasive species issues.
Okay.
In Ontario, so
there's plenty in Ireland too, so don't worry too much.
We understand.
Yeah, right. So I suppose that's the basics of it, really.
Cool. Well, let's maybe do the history bit. So I'll try and see if I articulated this properly through doing my homework here, but my general understanding is what happens. So I guess just to clarify, so this is a multi-millennia year this is 5,000-year-old practice.
Yeah, so
there's
I think the first farmers came to the Burren, they reckon around 5,500, 6,000 years ago, around that time. Yeah. So it's been kind of going on since. It's going on a long time.
That's some major heritage.
Yeah.
So this is a practice that up until very recently was a practice. And was it when Ireland was starting to join the EU, there was this kind of, I guess, much like everywhere, I mean, we've dealt with this definitely ourselves, but that intensive drive for production. So what happened? Was it was it a mandate thing, or was it, hey, you should do this instead? And was it a carrot and stick? Did they push folks to?
Yeah. So basically, what happened is now, obviously, this was kind of the late 80s, early 90s, and when a lot of this happened. So it was kind of before my time, but
a tumultuous time in the ag sector. In general.
Exactly. And I suppose really. So from listening to older farmers, and particularly Michael Davern, he'd be a real stalwart man in the Burren now, and he's just done a fantastic amount of work for the Burren and for the programme and everything. He's just an absolute genius. But basically what happened is these special areas of conservation came in, and the Burren was classified as a special area of conservation, and farmers were basically told that you weren't allowed to graze your cattle on areas for particular months of the year because you were protecting that area because it was a special area of conservation, and it was going against the grain that everything the farmers had done. And basically what happened was the Burren farmers kind of said, well, this isn't right, this isn't what we've always done, this is wrong. And I suppose they went to fight it but I suppose there was a couple of years where the ban had came in, and then you see with everything because incomes were dropping on farms, so the vast majority of farmers in the Burren are part-time farmers. They're not full-time farmers. So it was kind of becoming, and then people were saying, well, look, we'll put up slatted sheds and we'll put the cattle in for the winter, and then when I come home from work, it's only turn on a light, we'll feed them silage. You're not going out into the winter.
So you've got hard practical realities also affecting this transition. Yeah.
And it really came to the stage where, and it was just that you weren't allowed grazing. But then they got the laws reversed, but people had kind of started to get into a stage there as well, and they'd started feeding silage as well out in winterages. And that was having really devastating impacts, because basically throwing down a bale of silage, the cows were literally coming, they were standing in the one point all day eating out of the feeder, and they weren't going off grazing, they were just happy out, they were getting their feed there, and it was obviously causing a lot of damaging issues as well on the side in terms of poaching and all the rest of it.
And poaching being, just in case I do in fact use this for a Canadian listener, poaching is just beating the ground up.
Exactly, beating the ground up, and the grass will turn into soil, and you know that it doesn't look like, I suppose, like what it should look of. And then of course then there's cows are, they're weaning it, they're pooing in it, and then obviously all that runoff is going down into water courses and streams and all the rest of it, so it all has a detrimental effect. So basically the farmers came together and basically Michael Davern, now he was head of Burren IFA, still is, and he would have been instrumental at this at the time, and he said, look, this, we need to do something about this is a unique landscape, and the farmers are coming against us. And basically he was told, he went to look to Teagasc, which is the kind of the head agency for advisory and research in the country in terms of agriculture. And basically someone in Teagasc told him, there's no way you're going to get anywhere unless you get some science behind your method, because it was only farmers coming together. So anyway, they looked and they put in, and they got a PhD student, and the PhD student's name was Brendan Dunford. And basically Brendan came and did a study, and basically Brendan's research showed that if farmers didn't graze, it was going to have detrimental impacts in the Burren. And that's, I suppose, how the programme was born, the Burren Life programme that we know.
Sorry, if you did, what year thereabouts?
That would have been the very late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah, so Brendan went around. I think his research might have been finished in maybe 2001, 2002. And then they went to the EU and they got funding for the Life programme. And I think that started 2005, 2006-ish time. And basically there was 20 pilot farmers then went into that. That scheme ran for maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 years. I'd say maybe 3 years. And then basically it was extended out then, and more farmers got in, and then more and more farmers got in then into the scheme.
All right. So then looking at today, that's like smooth sailing, or like how? Well, it's never smooth sailing, but has the pressure on this particular production system lessened at least in this respect, like pressure from higher up to stop doing it, or because you're still doing it, which means that it's possible. I know it's a very complicated question, but
no, if you talked to me this time last year, I would have said, it's all plain sailing, lads, we're laughing. But unfortunately, in the new CAP cycle, the agricultural scheme has changed, and the Department of Agriculture saw fit to kind of pretty much get rid of the Burren programme. And it's gone in under this new environmental scheme that we have in the country called Acres, and the Burren scheme is gone in as a cooperation area, and some of the very good elements and core elements of the scheme, the old Burren Life scheme, which the Burren Life scheme was based on, have been taken out. Now some elements are still there, but the actual core values in terms of the scoring, so basically basically under the new scheme, they want every inch of your land to be scored. So your green fields, your winterage fields, and you're getting a payment rate based on all those, whereas in the old scheme it was just your winter ground that was paid, and your summer ground was left out of it, because every farmer obviously has summer and winter ground. So look, there has been some magnificent research done by the team above in Cairn, the Burren Life team, and they have literally figures year on year that show that that it's increasing, that the floor numbers are increasing, that the scores are increasing. So we'll have to wait and see what will happen next. But
it's so a bit of a limbo period.
Okay. And look, we kind of put it to the Minister for Agriculture. We went and we met him, a couple of us, and we said, look, we want kind of our proper programme back, but that kind of doesn't fully seem to be. But look, there might be ways of fixing it, and there is some fantastic people working above in the Burren Life office above in Cairn, and like with Brendan Dunford and Sharon Parr, and there are a few more there. They're absolutely excellent, and look, they're going to they'll always try and find a way and try and do what's right, because basically it was Brendan and Sharon that built the original burn programme, and everyone knows it. It's European wide, it's nearly global at this stage, that it's the footprint for results based payments, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking to two Canadians, so it's just definitely of interest beyond borders. All right, well, we'll leave the politics outside, because
good idea,
because I don't know if I can write about that anyway. So
fair enough.
The actual production system, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but kind of a counterintuitive thing for a lot of folks, right? So, the wintertime out here, like, we've been here, the earliest was early March.
Yeah.
Man, it can get nasty.
Yeah.
It can get nasty.
It can.
I guess it's just a little funny to us. Like, how in the devil can this actually...
So I suppose what I did when I finished my school is when I did my leaving cert, so there were final school exams, and I started college. I went to college in Waterford and I studied agricultural science. And I remember the first time I told my friends that we put our cows out into the mountain for the winter, I thought they didn't believe me. They thought I should be locked up. They thought I was, they did. They thought, they were like, this lady is off her head altogether. But and I kind of hadn't realised it's such a unique system. So basically, like, I suppose the thinking behind it, you go back to the ancestors, like, you have the whole idea was there was plenty of water up there. Yeah. Obviously there was plenty of forage up there because the grass has been growing and all the plants have been growing all winter long. But also the other key element to it is that the limestone actually absorbs the heat of the sun in summertime, and in winter it slowly releases it. So if you actually put your hand down on a bit of limestone pavement today, even if it's cold out, there's still a bit of warmth to it. So basically that gives cattle a dry lie above in the winterages. It also gives them a dry lie, it gives them plenty of water obviously and loads of forage. So it very much suits. And I suppose people often say that to me when the weather is bad. In fairness, the winters are extremely sheltered, so if the weather is bad, the cows will just tuck themselves up in a spot and they'll find a spot, and they're very, very hardy and they will survive. And I think sometimes people don't give cattle enough recognition for how intelligent they are, and how they're well able to survive. Like, I think sometimes people be kind of,
they're not just going to idly stand out.
Exactly.
No,
they won't. They'll go and find their own little spots, and like even above in our winterages there's spots that are nearly more. There's more shelter in them than if a door was open in a shed. Like, they're really well sheltered. And I suppose if you look at the cows then as well, they're really hairy because they grow a winter coat on them and it keeps them good and warm. Like, so.
Well, that was going to be another question of mine was what breeds are we talking here? Because I don't think you're throwing Simmental up on top of that.
Well, no, we don't, but some farmers would, not a whole lot. With Limousine is what we really go with, and Limousine crosses. Yeah. So I suppose the Burren would be really renowned for its continental cattle. So there'd be a lot of Limousines and a lot of Charlies in the Burren. They'd be the two main breeds. Yeah, they'd be the two main breeds that farmers would use. We ourselves use Limousine now because I think the Charlies are small, a little bit soft, and our cows are mainly Limousine cross cows, so they might be crossed with a bit of Angus.
I should have asked this before, but it's your suckler
cow system,
which for us, I guess, is cow-calf.
Yeah, so basically the suckler to weanling is what we would call it. So basically the calf down in the springtime, and we wean the calves off and take the calves off them in September, October time. Yeah.
Cool. And just to clarify this too, so they're up there from October till... Well, I guess they're there as we're talking about now. So end of March thereabouts. Yeah,
end of March. Maybe could be going into kind of the middle of April, depending on when they calf. So what we do is we bring them down in stages of when they're due to calf. So like we'll say any cows there's cows and calves down at home now, and they're out in the fields or whatever. But there's still cows that are left to calf, and they stay up in the winters until maybe a week before they calf, and they come down then.
And how about the actual day-to-day management? I mean, you going up to the top of the mountain in the dead of winter in some gnarly weather. Like, it's got to be a bit of a pain in the rear from time to time.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, but I suppose the thing is, we start, because there's a lot of studies being done, I suppose, in the grassland system up there, and all the rest of it. So basically, I suppose when they were doing the research for the Burn Life, they wanted to see exactly what was required by the cow. So they did a lot of forage samples. So basically, from after Christmas onwards, the percentage dry matter in the grass really, really drops off. So it's very much like straw. So once it gets to the middle of January, we start feeding. So once you start feeding, you go up every day. And in fairness, if you're consistent with your feeding times, the cows will be there waiting for you. So there's very little management in it. So it's not too bad in that regard.
They learn fast.
They do. But still, at the same time, when it's howling above there, you still have to go up. Like 2 weeks ago, we had the snow. There's 2 sets of cows up there. So there's one right up the top and there's one kind of lower down. Like the top set of cows couldn't get to them because of the snow. So to walk them down through the snow, like they were walking down through 2 feet of snow in parts, to come down to get hay, like, so, you know, so that was one of those, oh my god, why are we doing this days? But we got through it.
Yeah,
so.
but you get that in any system too, I guess.
You do, that's for sure.
Certainly had enough of those myself.
Yeah.
Just doing cash crop stuff. Something else I want to ask about is the communication efforts, not necessarily directed at government, but just, let's say, government and just the public more generally. So there's the annual, like the walk that you do, the community. It's a community event, right? Where you invite folks out to do the walk as you're bringing the cattle up to the. I keep wanting to say high pasture. I don't know if that's the right word or not.
Winterage is what we call it. Yeah.
To the winterage. So what? Tell me about that, and maybe some other, because communicating with the public, especially with food production, as people are ever more perennially interested in, and it should be, in the sorts of things, and that subject's kind of close to my heart from some past work I've done as well. You know, it can be really challenging. It can, you know, you have an opportunity to talk to people who might not agree with what you're doing per se. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But what other kind of efforts have you done, you personally, or just the community?
So I suppose, but there's a really good charity here in the Burren called Burren Bio Trust. It was originally set up by Brendan Dunford and his late wife Anne, and like that charity has done some absolutely fantastic work. So they do a lot of different bits and pieces, but they do like a schools program. So basically they go into the primary schools and teach the children all about the local, the Burren and all the rest of it.
Just locally, or just
so it's actually really locally in the Burren. So I suppose when it started off when I was actually in primary school. So I was one of the first. We became a Burren expert, is what we were called when we qualified.
Thank you for that, by the way.
It was really, really good. But so basically, so it covers a lot of the schools. It's even gone into South County Galway now. You know, anywhere that's kind of infringing around the Burren, they cover all those schools for that. And look, they do the Burren Bio as well. They do monthly member walks. You can become a member of Burren Bio Trust, you know, and it finds out. But I think the real jewel in the crown has been the cattle drive, or the Winterage weekend that it's on, the bank holiday weekend in October every year. So we were so lucky that we hosted it in 2019. So we had about 800, 900 people that came on the walk with us. And it was just amazing falling into step with people that day. Like it was, you were meeting people who were farmers below in Wicklow in the south of Ireland, you know, who were just kind of up for a day experience. And you were meeting people that had never stepped foot in a farm before in their lives. And they were, you know, everyone was getting to be a farmer for the day. And it was such an educational experience. And I really think I think maybe the whole landscape of the Burren, and you know, because it's pretty and it's a nice thing to do, I think it kind of draws people in, but and that they can actually learn and talk to farmers. But like, I think as well, it's so important that there has to be connection between people and the land, because people are getting everyone's looking at what they're reading on Twitter and the newspaper and all the rest of it, and like, I think it's so important that people actually do get out and land. So Burren Bio have been excellent in that front, you know, that they are, you know, and it's very, you know, there's great transparency and things like that for, you know, to getting people out and farm, and you know, it is good like that, and I think it's so important. But I think that weekend it's so important. It's fantastic to celebrate the culture of Winterage and all the rest of it, but I think going forward it's actually just so important in terms of people, so that they get an understanding of the landscape and, you know, management. And you know, because one bad story comes out and every farmer gets labelled the exact same way, like it's terrible.
It's not it's a saying it's a challenge is an extreme understatement.
Yes.
But it's also a safe way to explain. Well, thanks for listening, folks. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I think there's a lot of value in getting some of these stories out there. I'd love to hear what you have to say, your thoughts, questions, opinions, or just general chatter. If you want to get in touch, just have a look at the description accompanying to this recording. And thanks again. Sláinte.